Baten Kaitos 1 and 2 HD Remaster from Bandai Namco is getting set to release onto the Nintendo Switch in just a few more months. And just about every single week, Bandai Namco has decided to take the opportunity to not only showcase just the massive level of improvements that they have done to this game through plenty of quality of life improvements, but also things that they have decided to change basically for the betterment of the franchise potentially going forward. I've put out 2 separate videos of different quality of life improvements, 10 and 7 separate brand new features that they decided to add to the game. But today in this video, I want to cover just 5 brand new combat focused features that will be improving the game in ways we haven't necessarily seen before. We're going to be talking about the Wings of Hearts, the Spirit Possessions, the Magnus, and a couple of other things as well. Remember that the combat is card focused essentially. It's not like a typical RPG in a sense. It's very akin to what modern roguelike games are actually doing, which is really interesting because originally this game came out all the way back in the GameCube era, of course, and it was doing things that modern games have actually decided to improve upon. So we're going to be talking a lot about some of the combat improvements that we have seen. Not only that, you should start be seeing a couple of brand new screenshots provided by Bandai Namco Japan. Link in the description below for all of the sources, where they're essentially showcasing plenty of combat information. Sadly, it's only Japanese, but thankfully I've been able to translate most of it. First and foremost, they talk about the Wings of Hearts. Baten Kaitos takes place in the continent floating in the sky, and the inhabitants sport wings on their back. Those wings are normally invisible, but whenever someone is feeling nervous or concentrating really hard, they show up as their aura. The source of those wings is one's hearts, which is why the appearance and shape is affected by the person's state of mind. So one of the things that you'll often see in combat is that characters have different kind of wings appear on them, and that is because, of course, the Wings of Heart are something of a spiritual representation of their will to fight. In that sense, they also talk about the Spirit Possessions. In the past, as the boundaries between his world and another dimension, 2 spirits from different worlds could meet and unite. The otherworldly spirits were called guardian spirits. People who can hear them are called spiriters, and they're extremely rare. Those spiriters are also said to gain great wisdom and power through their incantations with the guardian spirits, so much so that spirit possessions are believed to affect the very fate of the world. Unlike most RPGs where you simply play as one of the characters, in Baten Kaitos you actually control the guardian spirits who dwell inside the main characters. Throughout the game, the protagonist occasionally talks directly to the guardian spirits, and you have to choose between different options. Depending on your answers, the protagonist will trust you more or less. You may also gain some bonuses and battles based on your trust level. So if that idea sounds somewhat reminiscent of what Persona is doing nowadays, it's because, of course, these games were pretty much intertwined. Not necessarily related, different developers and publishers, of course, but those same ideas were relatively popular back when these games were being developed. When we're talking about the Magnus, they talk about that in the world of Baten Kaitos, there is a system that allows one to seal a wide variety of items, whether it is equipment, weapons, etc. By absorbing their Magna essence, said to be the essence of all things, store it in separate cards. The use of these can return items of their original forms by using said cards, and such cards are known as Magnus. So essentially, every single equipable item you have should be part of a card set, and there will be plenty of different variations. So again, if you think of like deck builders in that same idea, you will be able to deck out your characters based off the cards that you find, but more importantly, the ones that better suit whichever playstyle you want to focus on. Magnus battles are something that in Baten Kaitos, the battle system revolves around those Magnus cards. Battles take place in real time, and you need to have quick judgment in order for the appropriate cards, whether it's offense, defense, or recovery, to be used at the proper time. Also, you need to take into account the strength and weaknesses of enemies and attributes by the Magnus cards. The battle system offers a lot in depth and many possible combinations for you to choose from. So once again, any one single character can be tailored which however playstyle you wish to set them up on. Obviously they have preferential setups that you want to focus on, but at the end of the day, that's why you have multiple characters on your team. You can set up, for example, a tank, a defense, an attacker, and a healer type. You can set that up however it is that you want. Lastly, the Magnus are affected by the passage of time. The cards change as time goes, and essentially, basically they turn older, so they gain age. Their effects change accordingly. So it is important to keep track of those changes and keep them in mind whenever you use them in Magnus battles. So for example, if you have a Bamboo Shoots Magnus card, which allows you to recover some strength when used in battle, it grows into a young bamboo over time. So essentially it turns into an attack Magnus card. After a few hours of play, the longer you wait to use that card, the more powerful it becomes, and it can turn into something like a fishing rod, for example. Another example that they provide is a fresh Meat Magnus card. If you wait too long before using it, it will spoil and it will turn into Rotten Meat Magnus. So it can be both beneficial and obtrusive if you're not necessarily too sure if you want to allow that card to essentially age. But with aging, it isn't the only way for new Magnus cards to be obtained. You can also use Magnum Mix. If you combine Sparkling Snow with Lovely Syrup Magnus cards, these are two separate type of cards, you will get Shaved Ice of Love, which essentially increases your resistance to fire. So you have something of a transmutation type system where essentially merge cards together to form brand new cards. This is not necessarily a new concept for games, but something that these type of games back in the day in its era pioneered originally. Lastly, for those who have a sweet tooth, there are several Magnus-based sweets, including Japanese sweets. For example, connoisseurs will eat things like original series healing cards, for example, the Sunkungori Ohagi, or Magnus, where essentially the Magnus card increases your HP whenever you eat it. However, it is so popular that it sells out quickly. So essentially, you want to be able to use them in shops right before or pick them up in shops before other characters get their hands on them. And if you're more of a pudding person, the custard pudding Magnus card is something that will raise your statuses and resistances, so you certainly want to keep your eyes peeled for that. One of the things that you'll also notice is that there are collaboration Magnus cards. So for example, you'll see that there's like a Pac-Man Magnus card available in the game, and that is because back in the day Bandai Namco was doing IP collaborations with their own IPs to bring forth this franchise. One of the recent interesting developer interviews that we saw quickly mentioned that Bandai Namco, when the name Baten Kaitos was originally introduced, they weren't necessarily too thrilled because they didn't necessarily know what to make out of what those words meant strung together. The developers had to kind of do a very good job convincing the upper echelon of Bandai Namco at the time to be able to get the name approved. But that's about all the information that I have for you guys today. Certainly very excited for Baten Kaitos 1 and 2 HD Remaster to drop onto the Nintendo Switch later this year. If you're brand new to my channel, though, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Hit the bell to receive notifications when the videos go up. And as always, thank you so much for watching. See ya.